Picture the worst version of a Saturday on the water. Lights flashing behind you, a citation in your hand, your boat on a trailer headed to an impound lot. In Texas, one of these mistakes carries a fine up to $10,000. In Illinois, it can mean jail and a record that follows you for life. Most owners never connect the dots, because each violation feels small on its own. Add them up, and you are looking at the most expensive mistake a boater can make in 2026. We will get to that number. First, the 8 that lead to it. Think of this as an audit. It looks at one thing, how much legal risk you are carrying. 9 line items, each one a law you can break without ever leaving the marina, and each one with a price tag I can read straight off the state code. Some cost $100. One of them can take the boat. By the end, you will know exactly where you stand and exactly what a friendly wave from a patrol officer is really checking for. Keep a running total in your head as we go. The bill grows faster than you think, and the people writing these tickets are counting on you never doing the math. Understand the one thing that makes the water different from the highway. The Coast Guard does not need a reason to stop you. They can board and inspect any boat, anytime, for a safety check, no reason required. So, this is not really about getting pulled over for doing something wrong. It is about whether your boat survives an inspection that can land on you for no reason at all. Start with the cheapest line, because almost nobody sees it coming: the boater education card. For a long time, it was a maybe, something only younger operators had to bother with. Not anymore. Starting in 2025, California and New York require a safety certificate for every single motorized boat operator, no matter your age, no matter how many years you have owned the boat. Read that again. Every operator. So the 60-year-old who has run the same lake since he was a teenager is now, on paper, operating without a required card the moment that law switches on. Get stopped in California without the card you suddenly need, and that is a citation up to $100, and you still have to go take the course and get the card afterward. A free afternoon turns into a fine plus a homework assignment. New York now sits in the same column, and these rules phase in by birth year and by state, which makes the rule a moving target. You are expected to track yourself, and the card does not always travel. A card that works in your home state may not work in the state next door, so the owner who trailers to a different lake on vacation can be perfectly legal at home and cited the moment the wheels cross the line. And this is the direction every state is moving, not the exception. That is line item 1, and it is the small money. The paperwork already sitting in your glove box is where the real volume of tickets comes from. Registration. It sounds like the most boring word in boating. It is also, according to the people who actually write the tickets, one of the most common citations on the water, year after year. This is why it is such easy money for them. An officer does not need a reason to check your numbers and your decals. They are painted right on the side of the hull, in plain sight, the easiest thing in the world to spot from another boat. An expired sticker, faded numbers, or the certificate of number left at home on the kitchen counter, and you have handed them a clean reason to come alongside. In Illinois, operating an unregistered boat is up to a $500 fine on a first offense, and the moment they are alongside for that sticker, they are looking at everything else too. So a $30 renewal you forgot becomes the loose thread that unravels this entire audit. If you are wondering how something that small can cost you that much, so is everyone who has already lived it. And this is where a cheap sticker turns into a real bill. Once an officer is legally alongside you for that decal, every other line on this list is now in play. The jackets, the extinguisher, the flares, the lights, all of it checked in one stop. One expired sticker is rarely one ticket. It is the key that opens the rest of the audit. And depending on where you trailer that boat, the state sticker is not the only one you need. Across the West, there is a second rulebook most owners on the coasts have never heard of, built to stop invasive mussels, and it is getting harder, not softer, in 2026. In Texas, failing to drain your boat and gear and remove clinging plants is a fine up to $500 on a first offense, and up to $2,000 plus as much as 180 days in jail if you do it again. In Oregon, simply failing to stop at an open inspection station can cost you $115. Wyoming now requires a valid invasive species decal on every boat on its water this year. Utah makes you take an annual course and pay a fee before you can even launch. And the penalty is not always a fine. After a day on the one Utah lake with confirmed mussels, your boat can be ordered to sit dry for as long as 30 days before it is allowed to touch another body of water unless a certified crew decontaminates it first. That is not a ticket, that is your whole season, and this is not a sleepy program. In Idaho alone, inspectors ran more than 173,000 watercraft checks in a single year, up 67% since mussels turned up in the Snake River. If you tow your boat across a state line this summer and skip the orange sign, you are not bending a guideline. You are committing a citable offense in a system that is expanding fast. Which brings us to the gear they check the second they actually step on board. The sound signal, a whistle, a horn, something that can make a blast loud enough to be heard half a mile away. That is the legal standard, and most boaters either lost theirs years ago or never carried one at all. It feels like a joke, a missing whistle, right up until it is $20 of plastic standing between you and a citation for failing to carry required safety gear. Officers love it for exactly that reason. You cannot argue your way out of a whistle that is not there. There is no story to tell. It either hangs on the console or it does not. And unlike a faded number an officer reads from a distance, this one they find by simply asking you to show it. For a lot of boaters, the honest answer is a long pause and a dig through a dry bag that has not been opened in 2 seasons. Add it to the ledger. It is small. The next one is small too. A single burned out bulb, right up until the sun goes down, and that bulb decides whether you make it home clean. Navigation lights. From sunset to sunrise, and anytime visibility drops, your boat is required to show the right lights. White plus the red and green side lights in the right places, all of them working. A bulb burns out over the winter and you never notice, because you almost never run after dark. Then one evening, the fishing is good, you stay out too long, and you motor back through the channel as an unlit vessel in the exact conditions the rule was written to cover. In 2025, Illinois rewrote its lighting rules to line up with the federal standard for how bright and how far those lights have to show. Think about what that tells you. The bar is rising, not falling. And this is not a paperwork problem, it is a body count problem. The Coast Guard ties human error and broken navigation rules to roughly half of all reported boating accidents. A burned-out bulb is a fine, and far worse, it is the single most common ingredient in a nighttime crash. And the citation is the smallest part of that. Clip another boat in the dark while running unlit, and the bulb you never replaced is no longer a $40 fix. It is the first thing the investigators write down, and the first thing the other side's lawyer points to. So far, this audit reads like nuisance money, the kind of thing you shrug off. Keep that running total in your head, though. Everything so far is pocket change next to the figure waiting at the bottom of this list. And the next line is the one that catches even careful, experienced owners completely flat because the rule changed and nobody sent them the memo. The fire extinguisher. This is the part that gets the people who think they did everything right. Your extinguisher can expire, and most owners have no idea it is even possible. Since April of 2022, federal rules put a hard 12-year limit on disposable, non-rechargeable marine extinguishers, counted from the date stamped into the bottom of the bottle. Hit 12 years, and it is no longer legal gear, full stop, even if it looks brand new and the gauge still reads green. That is not the only trap. If your boat is a 2018 model or newer and under 26 feet, the old B1 and B2 bottles do not count at all anymore. You now need the newer 5B, 10B, or 20B class, unexpired and marine rated. So the extinguisher you proudly bought once, mounted, and then forgot about for a decade may be failing on 2 counts at the same time, expired and the wrong class. And there is a third way to fail this one. It has to be easy to reach, mounted where you can grab it in seconds, not buried at the bottom of a storage locker under the life jackets and the cooler. An officer flips it over, reads the stamp, and writes you up for not carrying required working equipment. When this rule first landed, the Coast Guard said it would focus on education first, warnings instead of tickets while word got around. Years on, it is a standard item on a safety check, and an expired bottle is a clean citation the moment an officer decides to write it. This is the one I would go check tonight, before anything else on this list. Because the next item is sitting right next to it in the same locker, and it is the one that is actually supposed to save your life. Life jackets. You have them. That is not the question. The question the officer asks is whether you have the right number, the right type, in good working condition, and within reach. One Coast Guard approved jacket for every person on board, not 3 of them sealed in a bag under a cooler. Torn straps, a cracked buckle, a mildewed foam vest left behind by the previous owner, and your usable count quietly drops below the number of people on the boat. In California, missing or improper life jackets can run up to $500. Children under 13 have to be wearing theirs while the boat is underway on federal waters, not just have one somewhere nearby. And there is a second device hiding inside this same line. Any boat 16 feet or longer needs a throwable, a cushion or ring you can toss to someone who goes over the side. Most owners either never had it or used it as a seat cushion until it fell apart. It is its own requirement and its own separate citation, and there is a fresh wrinkle that has not reached most owners yet. The Coast Guard is moving to new performance-level labels, replacing the old Type 1 through Type 5 system you grew up with. Older labeled jackets are still legal if they are approved and still usable, but the change is a good reason to actually pull every vest out and look at it. This is not red tape for its own sake. In state after state, the number one reason people lose their lives on the water is drowning, and they were almost never wearing a jacket. The thing designed to keep you alive is also, every year, one of the most cited items on the water. Add it to the ledger. We are now leaving paperwork and worn-out gear behind and walking into the part of the audit where the law itself moved under your feet while you were not looking. Visual distress signals, flares. On coastal waters and certain larger lakes, you are required to carry them, and the catch gets almost everyone. They expire. A flare is good for 42 months from the day it was made, and after that, it is legally worthless, no matter how it looks. Boaters keep the same orange flare kit in the same scratched plastic case for years, never opening it, assuming a flare is just a flare. Then, an officer checks the dates, finds them long gone, and cites you for failing to carry valid distress signals. It is the same trap as the Extinguisher wearing a different costume. The gear is right there. The calendar is the thing that failed you, and the painful part is how avoidable it is. The Coast Guard Auxiliary will inspect your whole boat for free and tell you exactly what is expired, no ticket attached. The free version takes an afternoon. The other version takes your money. That is the last of the easy ones. The final two are a different animal. These are not about gear that quietly aged out. These are about a federal law and a wave of enforcement that simply did not exist when most of you bought your boats. Stop and total the ledger so far. The card, the registration, the second sticker out west, the whistle, the lights, the extinguisher, the jackets, the flares. None of them feels like much on its own. Stacked on a single afternoon, written up by a single officer who decides to check every box, you are already looking at well over $1,000 in fines on a boat that may never have left idle speed. And we still have not reached the two lines that actually hurt. Quick word before the two big ones, because this is where the money turns serious. If this audit is making you walk your own deck in your head, that is the entire point. Subscribe, and the next breakdown maps exactly where these stops happen the most and which states write the hardest tickets. Now, the line that changed under every owner watching this. The engine cutoff switch. Since 2021, federal law has required the operator of most powerboats under 26 feet to physically wear the engine cutoff link, the coiled lanyard, or the wireless fob anytime the boat is on plane or moving faster than a slow idle. The idea is simple and grim. If you go over the side, the engine shuts itself off, so your own boat does not come back around and strike you and everyone you left on board. Boaters have a grim nickname for what happens without it. The runaway circle. The reason the law exists is not theory. Every year, people are seriously hurt by their own boat coming back around after they fall out, and the switch is the $2 habit that stops it. It is a sound law. It is also one almost nobody actually follows. The clip sits unused on the dash of millions of boats every single weekend, treated like a decoration. But it is not a suggestion, and it is not a state quirk. It is a federal rule the Coast Guard can stop you for and cite you on the spot, anywhere on federal water. Most owners have never clipped it on once. Some states pin the rule specifically to boats that already have a switch installed, which now covers almost every modern outboard. So this is not a rule for a handful of go-fast boats. It is a rule for the family runabout, the base boat, the pontoon, the exact boats most of you are standing on. That is the gap, in one small object, between the boat you bought and the boat the law now describes, which leaves exactly one line on this audit. The number I promised you back at the start. The mistake that does not end with a fix-it ticket and a sigh, because it ends with your boat on a trailer and you in the back of a patrol boat. Boating under the influence. A blood alcohol level of 0.08 or higher, the very same line as driving a car, and it is illegal in every state and on every stretch of federal water. People treat the boat like a floating bar, partly because for the passengers, in many states, it legally is one. Open containers are fine for them. The person at the wheel is a completely different story, and the gap between those two facts is where careers and clean records fall apart, and you do not even have to be moving. In several states, you can be charged while anchored, drink in hand, as long as you are still the one in control of the boat. The fact that the engine is off does not save you. Alcohol remains the leading factor in the worst boating accidents, year after year. In Florida, it played a role in nearly a quarter of all lives lost on the water in a single recent year. cross that line and the audit stops being about fines and starts being about your life. In Texas, a boating under the influence conviction carries a fine up to $10,000 in jail time. In Illinois, a first offense alone can mean up to 364 days in jail and a fine up to $2,600. A second offense, or one with an injury, climbs into felony territory with prison and fines up to $25,000. Refuse the breath test to dodge it, and in many states your boating privileges are suspended anyway because by launching you already agreed to be tested. Your vessel can be impounded or seized outright. Your insurer can drop you, or jump your rates, the instant it sees the charge land. And if anyone is hurt, that same violation becomes the centerpiece of the lawsuit, proof that you operated below the standard of a careful boater. And if the worst happens, if a passenger goes overboard or another boat is involved, a simple charge becomes a felony with years in prison. Families have watched a single afternoon of beer in the cooler turn into a courtroom and a prison sentence. The cooler that felt like part of the fun becomes the first exhibit. Underneath all of it sits a permanent criminal record, the kind that follows you off the water and onto every background check for the rest of your life. That is the number, that is the line at the very bottom of the ledger. Everything stacked above it was money. This one is your boat, your record, and your freedom, all on the same ticket. And here is why this is not some distant warning in 2026. The single biggest planned crackdown of the year, a national enforcement weekend called Operation Dry Water, runs July 3rd through 5th, 2026. Extra patrols, checkpoints, blanket stops, all of it pointed at exactly this one violation on one of the busiest boating weekends of the summer. So the worst possible time to gamble on it is the stretch a lot of you are about to spend out on the water. And it is not only that weekend. States run impaired boating patrols all summer long, but that is when the checkpoints go up and the odds of a stop are at their highest. So walk it back to that Saturday. The lights, the citation, the trailer rolling toward the impound lot. None of it starts with bad luck. It starts with a stamp you never read, a card you did not know you needed, a sticker for a state you only visited, a clip you never bothered to attach, a calendar quietly running out on the very gear that is supposed to protect you. Run this audit on your own boat before someone in a uniform runs it for you. Walk the deck this week. Read the dates on the extinguisher and the flares. Count the jackets, and actually look at their labels. Clip the lanyard. Go get the card. None of it is hard, and all of it is cheaper than the alternative by a wide margin. And do not only check your own habits. If a friend ever takes the wheel on your trips, the lanyard, the card, the sober line at the throttle, all of it is on them too, on your boat with your name on the registration. If you want the next step, the state-by-state map of where these stops happen most and what each one really costs, that video is on screen right now. Watch it before your next trip, not from the dock after. Because the one thing every owner standing in that impound lot has in common is simple. They all assume the rules were the same ones they learned years ago. They were not.